Hello and welcome again to the Writer Review. This is Eric Carrot Writer, and this week we're going to be taking a look back at the 2011 comedy movie titled Bridesmaids. Now, Bridesmaids runs for 2 hours and 5 minutes long. It is directed by Paul Feig. It is produced by Judd Apatow. I kind of knew that somewhere down the line that he was going to be involved in this movie because, and when you expect something from a Judd Apatow movie, you will probably expect to see a lot of outrageous, over-the-top zaniness, and sometimes his movies tend to go past the 2-hour mark, even though a movie that's generally a comedy should not really go in the 2-hour plateau. But for some strange reason, Judd Apatow seems to somewhat make his comedy movies go past the 2-hour mark. Even though he's not directing this movie, like I said before, it's Paul Feig. Judd Apatow does have some creative control as he serves as the producer in this movie, along with Barry Mandel and Clayton Townshend. The script was written by Annie Momolo and Kristen Wiig. The score was done by Michael Andrews, the cinematography by Robert Yeoman, and it was edited by William Kerr and Mike Sale. And the stars of the movie it's pretty much a female cast. To me, sometimes I think of it kind of like in the same vein as a gender-swapped version of The Hangover. Is that necessarily a good thing or a bad thing? Depending on your point of view. Maybe it's might be for you, it may not be for you. It's there's no pleasing everyone, and everyone has different tastes and different perspectives, and no matter what, they'll always be respected by me. The stars of the movie here are Kristen Wiig, Maya Rudolph, Rose Byrne, Wendi McClendon-Covey, Ellie Kemper, Melissa McCarthy, and Chris O'Dowd. Through most of her life, Annie, played by Kristen Wiig, and Lillian, played by Maya Rudolph, have been the best of friends, almost closer than sisters from another mother. Their bonding could be almost like sisters. They seem to have known each other since childhood, and they seem to understand each other very, very well. So when Lillian ties the knot, it's only naturally that she asks Annie, her BFF, to be her maid of honor. Why not? I would have done the same thing too. But then things start to get a bit steamy when the insecure Annie starts to feel some tensions when Lillian's posh new friend, Helen, played by Rose Byrne, starts to steal her thunder. Everything that Annie has planned, Helen just scraps her plans and proposes something more out of her wallet, out of her endless supply of cash, and leaves Annie in the trenches, or Annie's plans in the trenches. Annie's life is really falling apart as at the seams right now. I mean, she's going through all kinds of problems, and it's something that we all face in everyday life. As much as we would like to conceal it, but we have to admit, everybody in life at one point or another suffers, whether we want to admit it or not. Here are just some of the things that has caused her life a bit of a downward spiral. Her boyfriend, Ted, played by John Hamm, is being a total jerk. Her roommates are giving her grief, and a kindly officer named Rhodes, played by Chris O'Dowd, is constantly getting rejected by his passion for her because he's not sure about him, even though he let her go without a ticket, in spite of her car having broken a taillight. Will Annie rectify herself from her problems, and will she and Lillian reunite their friendship? That is a big question. I mean, usually when it comes to marriage, I've always was led to believe that it's the bride that goes through these difficult, complex issues. But I also think it's kind of refreshing that it's not actually the bride that's going through these complex issues, but actually the maid of honor, if she actually ends up becoming a maid of honor. After the things that she's been going through and her rocky relationship with Lillian, her position as maid of honor is kind of like temporarily being put in question or being put in a to be determined situation. At one time, it was just unanimous that Lillian was going to appoint Annie to be the maid of honor. But after the things that has been affecting Annie's problems, which has been also been pushed to the limits by her and her circle of friends, and the on again, off again friendship between her and Lillian, her position is being put in the maid of honor, is being put in question. Maybe even going so far as to not even being invited to the wedding at all, since they had this big nasty fight somewhere near the end of the movie. And the question is, will they reconcile or not? Who knows? It's definitely this movie, Bridesmaids, even though it's got all the kind of slapstick stuff you would find in a traditional Judd Apatow movie, like the 40-Year-Old Virgin, or even movies like The Hangover and Pineapple Express and stuff like that. You sometimes get the impression that this movie was a gender-swapped remake of The Hangover. Whereas instead of the guys who are doing all the slapstick stuff, doing outrageous, over-the-top, wild and crazy antics and painting the town red, well, this time it's now the girls' turn that are doing all the slapstick stuff. And sometimes this slapstick stuff could be played for laughs, but then there's also a lot of cringeworthy stuff. Now, I know that in a lot of comedies, fans seem to like this whole route of where comedies go, aside from the over-the-top zaniness and stuff like that. Then, of course, there's also the fact that a lot of comedy depends on a lot of grotesque humor, which involves a lot of the bodily functions we as a human race do. Now, as much as we don't like to admit we do these things, it happens. We're humans. We do vile, gross, disgusting things like burp and pee and shit and fart and probably more other stuff that's vile and gross, like coughing and sneezing. Hey, we never asked to have these bodily functions affect us, but it happens. We all cough and sneeze and burp and barf and pee and shit and fart and all that. It doesn't matter whether you're a guy or a girl or a miscellaneous. We living things do these things. We living things have these bodily traits. And yeah, okay, I know it's kind of somewhat played for laughs to have girls engage in toilet humor by shitting in bathroom sinks and farting in public. But it happens. We're humans. They do it too. Even though they like to deny that they don't do it, but they do. Nobody's perfect. I plead guilty. I'm not speaking just for everyone else. I'm speaking for myself too. I do these things too. I'm not going to lie. But, you know, this is what you would expect to find in a Judd Apatow movie. Well, instead of The Hangover, which is a predominantly male cast, we have the females doing these things. And as much as the and as much as the social justice warriors out there would appall this movie because of the fact of how it badly misrepresents women, don't they ever sometimes stop to realize that they do all kinds of other vile, gross, disgusting things as well? Don't they also pee and shit and fart as well? Oh, I'm sure they do too. They're not made out of stone. Nobody is. Unless you're a statue. Then in that case, you're free. But I think the people who are listening in on my review, I don't think you guys are statues. At least I don't think. But other than all the grossed out humor that's depicted in this movie is definitely a tale of true friendship, resentment, romance, humor, and everything from fashionable trendiness to the ever-popular effervescent toilet jokes. For the most part, it's mostly played for satire, largely in part due to Kristen Wiig's sharp comic timing and a brilliant script she co-wrote with Annie Momolo. Like her album from Saturday Night Live, Tina Fey, Kristen Wiig definitely succeeds in staying oblivious in situations she shouldn't get and gets kudos for remaining that way throughout. In many ways, and aside from her playing kind of like a similar character role to Tina Fey, sometimes I think her angst and her nervousness and her somewhat neurotic ways in this movie does not always feel like a Judd Apatow themed type of movie. In some ways, her angst and her insecurities has a lot of inner Woody Allen in it too. Like a gender-swapped, younger, age-swapped version of Woody Allen and how he reacts in situations and themes where things don't go his way. And you see her inner insecurities and her neurotic demeanor can have an effect on her friends and colleagues. And you see that a lot in many of Woody Allen movies, especially the ones that he stars in. I mean, he gets into these neurotic spells as well. And if she's trying to channel in her Woody Allen ways, I got to admit, she's actually is doing a good job. Like any good comedy, Bridesmaids has serious undertones where stakes are at the most quite surmountable. The quirks from the film further explore the angst and the insecurities these women face, and the girl talk is not complete overkill. Don't worry, there is no male bashing, things like that scene. There's no scenes that take place in a saloon where they just sit around spreading gospel and talking behind people's backs and all kinds of double-crossing bullshit. None of that. There's none of that. So rest assured. But yeah, the angst, the trials, and the tribulations that these girls are facing, it goes to show you that when it comes to weddings, it's not just the bride or the groom that have cold feet. In the end, everybody has cold feet. Hell, even the wedding guests who are just there to sit down, listen to the sermons, and then, go into some ballroom for a lovely reception of delicious catered food and dessert And then, of course, you dance around the music. You have the time of your life. You know, it all just comes down, and it comes down to everybody is in the same situation. Everyone is having cold feet. No one is alone. Not the bride, not just the groom. The opening scenes has Annie and Ted having intercourse, and it looks as if they're having fun. Until we realize it's anything but, as Ted reveals to the viewers that he's not the Prince Charming, because I guess the requirements or the resume to require yourself to be a Prince Charming goes by the name itself, Charming. Unfortunately, we don't get any charm from Ted. So not only do we reveal that he has no charm, he also kicks her out of his house. Or out of his place. I don't know whether he lives in a house or an apartment or who cares. But yeah, he tells her, hey, listen, we've had our fun. Now get the fuck out of here. Well, something like that. I'm not all in complete words, but this is just kind of to sum it up. Then we see Annie's friend Lillian showing off a beautiful diamond ring. Annie was happy for Lillian, and that is until her fiance's boss's wife, Helen, enters the fray. This is definitely Rose Byrne. She was perfect here in a role where, I mean, as far as I know, Rose Byrne has always been seen in serious dramas, but here we actually see her refreshingly play off comedy quite effectively here. And then that's when things start to get heated. This makes Annie worried that her best friend isn't all the best as she thought. Or maybe she was just territorial and felt that she didn't want somebody else to take her spot. And that she made it her own mission to try to outsmart and outwit this Helen, even though many times it backfires almost to the brink where the friendship between Annie and Lillian temporarily came to a close. This makes Annie worried that her best friend isn't all the best that she thought. A funny scene is where they engage in musical speeches where one tries to usurp one another as they end up singing, "That's what friends are for good times and bad times, all in God forevermore." Okay, never mind. I don't know all the words to the song. I haven't even heard that song in like years. I know it was sung by Dionne Warwick, Stevie Wonder, Gladys Knight, and Elton John, but I don't remember all the words to the song. Then again, that was like back in the mid-'80s. There were a few scenes where the jokes, they do not work. Like, for example, the scene where the bridesmaids were invited to some kind of Brazilian steak restaurant before entering the boutique bridal shop, where Helen's financial advantage and every one of them ends up getting food poisoning, which of course results in them shitting in the sinks and even end up getting crap residue on their dresses. There's definitely a totally grossed out scene where they used a wash basin as a toilet. The mastermind behind this evil scheme is the groom's rotund sister Megan, played with some scene-stealing perfection by Melissa McCarthy. Another scene definitely has Megan literally grinding her teeth into Annie to unveil some home truths while the ladies were en route to Las Vegas. Because, hey, what's the best way to celebrate a baby shower, or a bridal shower in this case? Just like The Hangover, when they went to their groom shower or their bachelor party. Viva Las Vegas. Well, the same thing here for the girls in Bridesmaids. What's the best place to paint a town red? Go to roll up the dice, grab the aces, and go to Vegas, baby. Yes, indeed. That's what their plans are. The Hangover, last time I looked, could be copyright infringement or plagiarism, or just recycled elements from there. So that's where things just don't seem to always go very well in terms of script structuring. We don't need another Hangover reboot, ladies gender swapping version of The Hangover, going to Las Vegas, stirring up a little trouble, rolling some dice, wheeling and dealing. So, yeah, you do see that quite a bit. Now, a lot of people are wondering, where's the men in this movie? I mean, it is Bridesmaids, and I don't think this movie is a lesbian bride. No, even though there really hardly isn't any men in this movie. Yes, even chick flicks with a predominantly female cast, there's gonna be bound to be some men in this movie. Even though they're not really played to full effect, and even Chris O'Dowd's character is a police cop who speaks with an Irish accent. That's like one of the great Hollywood tropes, one of the big cliches that you would find and expect in a Hollywood movie, where yes, indeed, the cop happens to at times be a bit Irish. So although there are men in this movie as well that are pretty much in the background. Okay, enough of the Irish accent. Though we are welcomed by the warmly character, though cliched character of Officer Rhodes, who is an attraction to Annie, but also has an obsession with cupcakes, while she eats carrots on the sunrise of his car bonnet. And the funniest scene, where purposely commits mischief just to get his attention for speeding, drinking, and texting, and so on. Yeah, she tries to deliberately break all the rules just so that she could get his attention. Oh, and of course, because of his lust for her and her cupcakes, because, I think she works in a bakery, he always seems to just let her get away with driving, even though she's just committing many, many violations and unsafe hazards. But hey, he loves her cupcakes, and he seems to take a liking for her, so she's not going to get a ticket, but I'm sure the person next to her will. But what makes the script work is that the scenes just flow organically. It never feels staged or just branched out skits from Saturday Night Live. No, it doesn't feel like that at all. I like the flow of the story. I liked the interaction within the characters. And even though a lot of stuff is over the top, zany, slapstick, and maybe saturated with a lot of toilet humor that you would see in a predominantly guy-dominated comedy, here in this physical slapstick comedy that's predominantly female leads, you get that a lot too. But the script does work effectively. The storytelling is excellent, and I really couldn't recommend this anymore. We'd like to participate on the madcap misadventures that Annie takes pursuit in as her life has hit rockier times, and takes this journey ahead to get herself back together again. Yes, I know that underneath all this zany, over-the-top, crazy insanity that is in this movie, there are times when you just feel so bad for Annie, for all the bad luck that she has suffered, and we hope that there will be some sign of relief in the end. But I used to think that just like a lot of Woody Allen movies where everything seems to be dark and cynical and all, in the end, everything just works out. And, I hope that she does pull through. And, of course, it's not going to be an easy road. But even though in this movie, in the end, we do see a little bit more of her rejuvenating herself. And granted, there were scenes that work most of the time. There are some scenes that don't and just tend to drag, but they are few and far between. So in the end, Bridesmaids has high energy and shows that even women can also engage in physical comedy just as effectively as the men, from the Pineapple Express to the Hangover to the 4-Year-Old Virgin and all those other humor-themed situation comedies. But the journey ahead keeps us invested into the world of friendship and marriage, and definitely regaining the will to live. Definitely, I would highly recommend people to see this movie. It's a great comedy. It's not this mushy romantic stuff. Even though the movie is called Bridesmaids, it's not anything with sentimental mush in it. It's more slapstick than romance. And there's really not very many male cast members in this movie. It's basically a woman reboot from all those other early 2000s, mid-2000 movies that have been famous under the direction or the creative control of Judd Apatow. Here he's the producer, but he's directed a few movies as well, or has also gotten creatively involved in. And yeah, even though the movie does drag for a little over the 2-hour mark, it just moves by very, very quickly, almost as if it will run for an hour. It just runs by smoothly. So I guess if I was to give this a scale out of 10, I would definitely give Bridesmaids a 7.5. I highly recommend you see this movie. There are some flaws in the movie, but not so much so that it's distracting. So I guess this ends my write review. Thank you all for listening in. If you wish to subscribe to my channel, please feel free to do so. If you wish to leave a comment, go right ahead. But just remember the 3 simple rules. Be kind, be courteous, and please refrain from any rude comments. And I will be back again with another movie review. So until next time, this is Eric Karate Writer saying keep watching those movies, and I'll see you around. Goodbye.